1,600-fold nuclear radiation in Russia. People in Heilongjiang panic and flee. Infrastructure leap forward leads to disasters? Numerous China's housing, roads, and bridges at risk of collapse. Hebei's flood relief supplies left outdoors for half a year, still undistributed. Analysis: the CCPs Dilemma, supporting or abandoning Russia means certain doom. Xi's upcoming visit to Europe is CCP's new attempt to divide US and Europe, experts. It's all covered in today's China Truths. 1,600-fold nuclear radiation in Russia. People in Heilongjiang panic and flee. In Khabarovsk, Russia, just across the river from Fuyuan City, Heilongjiang, radiation levels in late March soared to 1,600 times the norm due to a detected radiation source. This has sparked widespread panic among residents, with rumors flying about mass exoduses from Heilongjiang. Zhao Longjian, a former media professional in China, published a series of articles in early April alleging a nuclear leak near the Russia-China border. He claimed that the leak had caused panic among residents of Heilongjiang City and led to a buying frenzy for Geiger counters, a device used to detect and measure ionizing radiation, in Heilongjiang province. Zhao also claimed that his former colleagues at a news portal had been ordered to delete all posts mentioning the incident, and his colleagues were afraid to talk about it for fear of reprisal. He also shared a screenshot from the Moscow Times, detailing how this extreme radiation prompted an emergency declaration in the area. The leak reportedly originated from mishandled nuclear waste during transit, unnoticed until the end of March. Zhao urgently advised Heilongjiang residents to disregard official CCP narratives and keep Geiger counters handy to monitor radiation levels. On May 2, Zhao tweeted that the extreme radiation levels had terrified locals into fleeing globally, some even reaching the US after seeing his posts. He recounted meeting a Harbin woman he knew whose family had decided to promptly relocate from the northeast to Hainan province and the US after reviewing the situation. Zhao explained that the local knowledge of radiation's dangers is profound, with rumors circulating that the Northeast won't be livable for a century, predicting widespread cancer and leukemia. He remarked that the affluent are fleeing, many to properties abroad, while even moderately well-off Northeasterners have homes ready in Hainan, leading to the situation where those who can leave are leaving. He expressed concerns that this targeted nuclear spill from Russia would exacerbate the struggles in China's northeastern provinces, questioning the endurance of the locals against compounded cancers from radiation, plus domestic vaccines, an unprecedented global medical crisis. Early April reports from Reuters, based on Russian media, confirmed that Khabarovsk declared an emergency on April 5 due to this radiation crisis, with the monitored nuclear radiation level exceeding normal levels by 1,600 times, causing alarm across northeast China. Despite this, local Russian reports claim life remains unaffected, and the Chinese National Nuclear Safety Administration found no unusual radiation levels as of April 10. Heilongjiang accelerates nuclear safety training as rumors claim Northeast may become uninhabitable. On May 2, one netizen shared a message from a northeastern hospital director requesting help to buy iodine pills, ominously noting that the region won't be habitable for a century. A debate has ignited online, with some pointing to a reported statement from Heilongjiang's nuclear safety agency about intensive training sessions held in Harbin to bolster local officials' readiness, a move that underscores the severity of the situation. Reports have emerged that Mudongjiang's water supply is now undrinkable, prompting residents to fetch water in bulk, some even driving to the site, amid concerns over a link to Russian nuclear activities. A vocal critic online accused the Chinese government of apathy towards the pollution affecting over 2.2 million lives in Mudongjiang due to Russian nuclear fallout. This indifference highlights a grim reality. To the CCP, Russia is esteemed as kin, whereas the Chinese people are deemed lesser, not even worthy of being called grandchildren. If there's any hope for this nation, it must recognize its true enemy, which isn't the USA, Japan, or even Russia. The discourse extends to comparisons with Japan's severely criticized yet regulated nuclear waste disposal, contrasting sharply with the muted response to Russia's uncontrolled radiation spill, seen by some as a damning reflection of Chinese media and government inaction, a response less humane than that of beasts. Others online echo this sentiment, calling the CCP's timid and shameful responses to international nuclear incidents both nefarious and cowardly. Infrastructure leap forward leads to disasters? Numerous China's housing, roads, and bridges at risk of collapse. As previously reported, in the early hours of May 1st, a section of the Meizhou-Dapu Expressway in Meizhou City, Guangdong, experienced a catastrophic collapse, resulting in 48 fatalities. Despite the lack of an official cause for the collapse, this event was quickly deemed a natural disaster by authorities by official reports on May 2nd. However, online discussions in China have reignited concerns about the country's earlier Great Leap Forward in infrastructure. American experts claim that this is a systemic problem that has been developing over time, and as a result, they predict that similar incidents involving buildings, roads, and bridges are likely to occur in China in the future. Currently, follow-up actions from authorities are aimed at bolstering defenses against mountain floods and geological disasters. Experts and departments are currently probing into the exact causes of the collapse, with preliminary investigations pointing to factors such as geological structures, rain erosion, and construction standards. According to reports, there are suspicions that the proper safeguards, like gravity-retaining walls and anti-sliding structures, were not adequately implemented during the road's construction, particularly in response to the recent heavy rains that could exacerbate soil erosion. Commenting on this tragic accident, Xu Xueye, a senior U.S. bridge engineer, after reviewing the details, told the Epoch Times that the incident was clearly due to poor construction practices. He remarked that the site's engineering should have withstood the rainfall if built correctly. His analysis suggests that improper construction techniques rather than natural causes were to blame, barring an earthquake. Xu emphasized, roads are built all over the world, and natural disasters occur frequently. But there's no such thing as soil suddenly slipping away like this. This is a man-made road, not a natural mountain slope prone to soil erosion. Properly constructed highways should not experience soil erosion as they are designed with protective slopes to hold the soil in place. Xu believes that CCP authorities are unlikely to find construction records for the collapsed section, as it was likely a substandard project. For a standard project, every step of the construction process, including who did what and when, can be traced. If these records are missing, it means the project was likely subcontracted multiple times, ultimately ending up with unqualified entities who took the money and delivered a shoddy product. He also addressed a common misconception that road slopes deteriorate over time. In reality, the opposite is true. As soil settles and compacts, the slope becomes increasingly stable. Xu concluded, the soil becomes more compact and stable over time, not looser. So, the age of the slope is not a factor in this case. Is China's Great Leap Forward in infrastructure starting to backfire? A wave of collapses looms. Over the last 2 decades, China has experienced explosive growth in its expressway network, now the longest in the world. Engineer Xu Xueye attributes this to the Chinese Communist Party's desire to showcase monumental achievements to validate its governance. This ambition requires economic growth, which in turn demands heavy investment in infrastructure, a sector rife with corruption that inevitably leads to compromised construction quality. While issues might not surface for a few years, they become evident over a decade later, setting the stage for more frequent accidents. He said, this pattern of cutting corners and reducing materials transforms minor quality issues into major faults, a hallmark of shoddy tofu drag construction. Xu, who hails from Hunan, China, has a background in civil engineering. He completed his PhD in structural engineering at Concordia University in Montreal and is now living in the United States. He warns that after decades of breakneck growth, especially under Xi Jinping's leadership, the accumulation of these so-called disasters is more daunting than many realize, obscured by state-controlled information. According to him, significant issues are emerging in major sectors such as housing, bridges, and roads. Many new buildings are showing structural weaknesses, like cracked walls and leaking basements. He also predicts that in the coming years, we will see a surge in accidents involving buildings, roads, bridges, high-speed expressways, and high-speed rail lines constructed over the past 10 to 20 years. Hebei's flood relief supplies left outdoors for half a year, still undistributed. Last August, a severe flood in Hebei province caused heavy casualties. Recently, a video emerged from Heilongjiang village in Bazhou city showing that disaster relief supplies from last year are still undistributed, left outside to deteriorate. The video captures these supplies strewn about a courtyard, exposed to the elements, with subtitles lamenting their non-distribution. Another clip from the same village shows dozens of bags of flour in a building likely used by the village committee, noting that other supplies previously stored there had disappeared. Online, a villager's complaint letter claims that Heilongjiang, designated as a flood release area last August, received compensation. Yet, the local committee's recent publication of compensation details revealed discrepancies with the actual conditions, including false claims by officials about private ownership of communal assets for personal gain. Netizens have commented on this mismanagement, with one noting on X platform that the supplies would rather rot than be distributed, criticizing the lack of proper storage facilities. This issue reflects not just local missteps but systemic flaws within the CCP's management of disaster relief, echoing past incidents where relief supplies were mishandled or embezzled, as seen after the 2008 Wenchuan earthquake. In late July and early August last year, the Beijing-Tianjin-Hebei region experienced relentless heavy rains that resulted in devastating floods in Bazhou, Zhuizhou, and other areas, leading to significant casualties and property damage. Anna Yifeng, the CCP secretary for Hebei province, highlighted the necessity of using flood storage areas strategically during a tour of Baoding City and the Xiong'annu area to reduce flood risks in Beijing, effectively creating a protective barrier for the capital. However, analysts believe that to protect the Xiong'annu area, the authorities intentionally caused flooding in other areas, thus creating a man-made disaster. Subsequently, videos emerged online showing that villagers in Bazhou City, whose homes were destroyed and who felt they were unfairly compensated, organized several protests at the city government. They held banners accusing the government of misleading the public by attributing the floods to rainfall rather than to deliberate water release. Additionally, after a candlelight vigil at a resettlement site was met with violent suppression by the authorities, the aggrieved protesters broke down the doors of the site in frustration. Analysis: the CCP's dilemma, supporting or abandoning Russia means certain doom. Recently, the United States delivered a final ultimatum to the Chinese Communist Party: stop supporting Russia or face severe sanctions. Following Blinken's return to Washington after his visit to China in late April, the U.S. slapped sanctions on 300 entities aiding Russia, including over 20 Chinese companies accused of exporting dual-use goods to Russia, facilitating its military assaults on Ukraine. Additionally, the Wall Street Journal reported on April 23 that the U.S. is drafting proposals for sanctions that would cut off certain Chinese banks from the global financial system to stop Beijing from backing Russia's military sector. Veteran journalist Yan Chuando recently argued on Facebook that the CCP supports Russia because they view the enemy of my enemy as my friend. With Russia as NATO's and America's adversary, and the U.S. now a foe of China, Russia remains a useful ally for the CCP, despite any past animosities. Mr. Yan recounts that post-World War II, China and the Soviet Union collaborated against the U.S., but by the 1960s, their relationship had soured. Mao Zedong then allied with the U.S. to alleviate Soviet pressure, and in the late 1970s, Deng Xiaoping engaged the U.S. to help with China's reform and opening up, which indirectly led to the Soviet Union's collapse. At the start of this century, as cracks appeared in Sino-U.S. relations, the CCP drew closer to Russia to counter U.S. pressure. According to Mr. Yan, Xi Jinping has made Russian President Vladimir Putin a key ally in CCP foreign policy. She covertly supported Putin's Ukrainian invasion, hoping it would quickly undermine NATO's dominance in Europe, benefiting China while harming the US. However, Putin's quick victory didn't materialize, and he is now mired in a drawn-out conflict, forcing Xi to increase his support secretly. The US quickly caught on to the CCP's undermining efforts and threatened to sever its sinister reach with harsh financial sanctions. Mr. Yan warns that the CCP faces a stark choice: continue supporting Russia and face debilitating financial sanctions, or stop and watch Russia fall, which would also spell doom for the CCP itself. He concludes that if the CCP continues its support, China's financial system could collapse, disrupting banks and trade, draining government revenues, and worsening civilian suffering. The CCP would have no choice but to stick with Russia until the end. Mr. Yan also believes that Russia is the CCP's only reliable major power ally. Without CCP support, Putin has no escape, and if he falls, she would be left isolated and powerless. With China's economy already in critical condition, a diplomatic failure could provoke a harsh response from Western nations, signaling the end of the CCP. Xi's upcoming visit to Europe is CCP's new attempt to divide US and Europe, experts. The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs recently announced that CCP leader Xi Jinping will be visiting France, Hungary, and Serbia from May 5 to 10. This marks his first European tour in 5 years, drawing significant interest from international observers. Xi's trip occurs against the backdrop of escalating trade tensions between China and the European Union (EU), highlighted by EU investigations into state subsidies that the CCP provides to Chinese companies, which allegedly allow them to undercut European competitors. Among the countries she will visit, France is perceived as the EU's weakest link in terms of resisting Chinese economic influence due to its prioritization of trade with China. Hungary, on the other hand, is known as the EU member most amenable to the CCP, while Serbia is a staunch ally of the Chinese regime. Mr. Lai Rongwei, CEO of the Taiwan Inspirational Association, spoke to the Epoch Times about Xi Jinping's motives for visiting 3 European countries. He suggested that the CCP wants to create so-called non-cooperation and disunity among European countries, and even wants to cause discord between Europe and the United States. Then, using this to break the containment of China by the United States. Mr. Lai indicated that Xi intends to resort to his old trick again, economic coercion, to achieve his goal. In response, the U.S. State Department has actively advised nations on reducing dependence on China and handling CCP threats. This strategy has become increasingly pertinent following the CCP's retaliatory actions against Lithuania in 2020, after Lithuania supported Taiwan's sovereignty. More recently, the U.S. has supported the Philippines in diversifying its agricultural export markets to lessen its economic reliance on China amidst escalating tensions over the South China Sea. Mr. Lai emphasized that such U.S. initiatives demonstrate a commitment to aiding countries facing economic pressure from the CCP. He stated, "This represents a high-level strategic effort to support allies and prevent the CCP from disrupting regional peace and stability." He also noted that while most European countries recognize the CCP's economic manipulations, only a few economically weaker nations remain dependent on trade with China. Adding to this perspective, Mr. Wang Guichen, an assistant researcher at the Tsinghua Institution for Economic Research in Taiwan, mentioned to the Epoch Times that there is a broad recognition in both Europe and the US of the CCP's tactics. He explained that the confrontation has evolved from a primarily US-China standoff to a broader coalition involving the EU and Japan, aimed at countering the CCP's economic pressures. This coalition has moved from engaging in traditional tariff wars to imposing technology bans, elevating the dispute to concerns of economic security. Let us know your thoughts on today's topic by leaving a comment below. If you found this video helpful, please share it with a friend. It inspires us to continue creating more quality and reliable content. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more interesting insights from China Truths. Thanks for tuning in.